Do you want to learn the tricks that top leaders use to get the most out of themselves and their teams? Well, Naftali Hoff is here to help. Lead to Succeed. Picks the brains of top leaders to learn about their challenges, insights, and best practices. Here's Naftali.
Hello, Lead to Succeed Nation. It's Naftali Hoff, and welcome to Lead to Succeed, episode 152. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Terracina Maxwell. Terracina is co-founder and president at Arvo Tech, creator of the tax strategy solution for small businesses. In her role, Terracina helps small and mid-sized businesses navigate an ever-changing tax landscape, focusing on developing comprehensive tax plans and helping employers unlock the full value of federal and state incentive programs. Terracina comes with an extensive tax background, holding the position of senior manager and tax team leader at Ernst & Young for nearly a decade before founding Arvo Tech. Terracina, so glad that you are with me today, and welcome to Lead to Succeed.
Thanks. Glad to be here. Glad to be with you.
Okay, so I just read the bio. Now tell us the real story. How did you get here? How'd you get into tax? Tell us a little bit more about who you are and what makes you you.
Sure thing. I didn't grow up thinking that I would be so into tax. Like, this was never something that in the back of my mind. You're right. As a kid,
as a kindergartner, I want to do tax.
I want to do tax. This is what I want to do.
Yes.
Nobody in my family went down this route at all. So, didn't think about I would do that, and also didn't think that I would start a small business. Like, that also was not my inclination. I have a few siblings. Two of my brothers way more entrepreneurial than me, even growing up, just like more inclined in that way. I wasn't that way, but I've always been somewhat of a risk taker and willing to try new things. And I think that's probably been something that has helped determine where I am today. When I went to undergrad, I'm from Ohio, went to undergrad at University of Akron, grew up in a small town close to there. Tried a few different majors before I landed on accounting. And then from there, immediately jumped to law school. So came to Columbus to go to law school and ended up staying here. So that was part of the path for the education background. I didn't go the typical route of being an attorney. Instead, I went to Ernst & Young and worked there for about 10 years. Just great people, great experience working, in the Big Four. Had learned a lot, but went directly into more of the consulting side or the tax credit and incentive side, where we would help large businesses take advantage of tax credits and incentives. And that was impactful and really helpful for me. But after about that 10-year mark, I began to get antsy again. And, that what else can I try, or what else can I do? Curious with what else is out there, kind of stepped in. So I quit. Thought I would go back to school for a little bit, because I just, when in doubt, school, I love learning, so that's kind of the way I'm wired. And that's when I met Brent Johnson, who is co-founder in this business. He has an accounting background, master's in tax, and he, we really talked about taking some of what I learned at Ernst & Young with these tax credits and incentives, where at EY, I was helping large multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar businesses, right, take advantage of the tax code in ways that helped lower their effective tax rate. Take that to small business owners who would never be able to afford an EY or even have the opportunity. And also, they're so busy that they're not even thinking about this type of thing, right? They don't even know it's out there. They might vaguely feel like, am I missing out on an opportunity? But they can't actually go into it, and they don't have the resources to know, can I take care of it? And so that's why we started it. And really through that, we've had to grow the technology piece, because you can't scale at that level. You can't help small businesses, can't make margins when you're just serving them the way that we did at UI. So we we have some proprietary technology to help them take advantage of some of these tax credits, and that's the path. That's where we are.
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm not sure where to start. I heard at least three things that I noted that I jotted down that I'd love to dive into more. You
Okay.
talked about, even though you may not be entrepreneurial, but that you have a certain tolerance for risk.
Yeah.
You talked about getting to a certain point in your career at EY and feeling somewhat antsy, maybe curious about what else is possible. You did talk about additional education, but
Yeah.
there's too many different paths to take, so I'm not going to go down that road. I don't even know if I'll go down all of these, but maybe
Sure.
even start with the last one, which is finding a way, or at least thinking about moving from providing services that you had at EY for the large corporation and try to take those same services to small businesses.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of elements that were intriguing to me about that. Number one, as a small business owner myself, as a mastermind facilitator of small business owners, just the fact that you talked about, for example, the lack of awareness, potentially, the lack of time or bandwidth that many people have. But it's also interesting to me how I don't know if you intentionally did this or kind of like fell into your lap, so to speak, that you identified a need in the market, that here's a group that's getting these services, they can afford it, they know where to turn, that kind of thing. Here's a whole subsection, not even subsection, large percentage of the marketplace that isn't being serviced, also is entitled to these tax credits, et cetera. And then really going after them and figuring out the proper path to create the margins and create the profitability and things that you need in order to be able to provide this service. So I'm just curious to know a little bit more, because I think a lot of the people who are listening are in that same space. They are also struggling with, I could barely keep my head above water.
Yep.
Forget financially, but also just in terms of my time and my bandwidth. And so what have you seen from the people that you work with? Of course, you could speak from personal experience as well.
Yep.
And what advice would you give to people who are, who have that feeling, maybe I'm leaving something on the table, maybe there's something else I don't know, or I just feel like I don't have the time or the wherewithal to pursue it.
Yep.
What advice would you give to people like that to help them not leave opportunity on the table, just for lack of a better term, not feeling like they can pursue every opportunity out there?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a few different strands there. I will say one of the things that made moving into this space, the reason it made sense is one of our core tax credit is a tax credit where if you hire like a veteran or an ex-felon or somebody on food stamps, you get, a tax credit for that. In looking at just, the research we were able to do, 90 to 95 of that tax credit went to large enterprise organizations. But in looking at the Department of Labor, they only hired about 40% of the people that qualified, which left a huge gap. That meant
Sure.
the people that were actually hiring folks that should get this tax credit are somehow not able to actually connect the dots there, which is why it just made sense that there was a market availability. There was also a change in the way that the tax credit was administered. So historically, it had to be, pen on paper signatures. And once, electronic signatures were allowed by the IRS, it opened up the idea that we could actually create this technology and go to small businesses. So that was the why behind and the timing of why it made sense to do it at that moment in time. That was, 10 years ago, like I said. So it made sense to create it and to build it. And then there's the element of, well, how do I now let small businesses know that they can take advantage of this? And how do I get into that space to make this easy for them? Because, as we talked, small business owners wear so many hats. How do you know this? So one of the ways that we've been able to really take this out into the market and make this easy is go through or create partnerships with platforms and people that they already interact with. And one of those platforms are payroll companies. So if we can tie in the process, so to speak, to obtain this tax credit into something that they're already doing and already have to do, so there's minimal lift on their side, that's where we have found it makes it easy and, quite frankly, a no-brainer to say, hey, let's go through this and let's see if this makes this tax credit make sense. So those types of partnerships and relationships from a business perspective have been really helpful, because otherwise small businesses just don't know this. The other piece that has really made an impact in talking with small businesses about this is the ERTC, which the Employee Retention Tax Credit, which came out because of COVID-19. Small business owners didn't even know there were tax credits at all before this that they could take advantage of because of that tax credit. And, there are all kinds of things related to that tax credit that we don't need to go into, but that at least opened the eyes of small business owners to say, what else is there? What else am I missing? What else should I be looking at? And so it created an opportunity for us, it has, to say, to make sure to somehow help educate small business owners. And really the onus is on us and what we do to make that as simple and easy as possible, so that they're not, they don't have yet one more thing. Now, small business owners care a lot more. When I was doing this at EY, we'd be tax credits in the millions of dollars. Small business owners are super happy with $5,000 or $10,000. They're like, thank you. Like, this makes a difference. This can help me breathe a little bit more. But it's there, and they should be able to take advantage of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I like, I'm sort of just took some notes here again, removing headwinds, trying to just remove complications for people, make it simple. I like the partnership piece in particular, because I think a lot of times, especially with sales, and this is really a sales strategy, we're trying to figure out how to reach my target market. So I've been referencing a lot in different contexts, including some live trainings that I've given, the notion of spray and pray, which is language often used for marketers as a pejorative term, meaning to say it's not strategic, not really clearly focused. And so we just put ourselves out there. Interestingly enough, I just used it with educators. Sometimes you teach a class and you spray the content and you hope that it resonates and lands on the students, but not necessarily so. But when you can collaborate with and create a mutually beneficial partnership with a company. So you talked about, I think, a payroll processing company, right? Or whatever it was, that's already a service that they're utilizing, that they have to utilize. And then you become, they bring you into the conversation, if you will, or whatever the process looks like. That makes it obviously a lot easier because you already have their attention. Another thing related to having their attention, then you can elaborate if you'd like to, is the point you made about once you had was it the ERTC? I forget exactly what the acronym is. But once you have that, that creates this understanding of, well, what else am I missing out on, right? And oftentimes, I think that's really powerful for not just tax credits, but I think it's powerful for leadership and life, and just the idea that we often don't know what we don't know. There are 4 steps to what eventually is unconscious competence, which is the ability to do good work without really having to think about it. That's the highest level of competence. The lowest level is unconscious incompetence. I don't even know what I don't know, right? So you're bringing people from a state of, I had no idea that tax credits were even available for a company like mine, to, well, now that I know about this, what else is there? And I think that that's true for life too. When I talk to teachers and about mindset, but I talk to business professionals too. But we don't even know that we have certain biases and certain ways of thinking and certain self-beliefs. But once awareness is created around that, I started to think more expansively, more critically, more analytically about all aspects of my life, because I realized that I'm not just programmed. I'm not
Right.
just this default. I can evolve, and you've evolved professionally. You've evolved in, I'm sure, personally too, in many, many ways. So you could feel free to respond to this collection of thoughts that I sort of distilled out of what you were saying. But it is interesting, as you were talking, to really hear the evolution of thought and the evolution of relationships, which ultimately
Yep.
help you build your business and serve more people.
That's exactly right. And it's, I mean, part of that is, driven externally by, new opportunities, or how do we educate to say, there's more in this unconscious,
Competence.
yeah, or yeah, whatever that first or
Oh,
second phase of that is, to help them
okay.
understand, like, there's more out there that you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And so part of it is that, part of it is, like you said, or like we've been talking about with the partnerships. I think another piece that helped even evolve our own business with this is listening then to our clients in what else maybe are we not thinking about, that they are saying, hey, here's other concerns we have around the tax code. Here are other things that we have questions about, and realizing, oh, we can continue to evolve as a business. And so that's why at the end of last year, we acquired 2 accounting firms that actually do tax work, because we weren't in that space. We were just in a very niche space as it related to tax credits. And then as we began to talk with our small business owners and saying, hey, or we would just get the questions asked frequently, what else is there? And as we learned, one of the things that, I mean, there's a lot we can talk about. I've never gone through acquisitions either on the acquired side or acquiring. And so there is, I mean, that's a big topic in and of itself, just how that, just the merging of culture and systems and all of that. But what it's been fun to do is not just say, okay, we can now do accounting, but how do we actually do it in a way that helps our clients, that brings additional value. Everybody knows closing the books is important, right? And everybody thinks, okay, I know I should do this, but I don't know why it happens. And you get your books from the accountants, and here's all your financial statements, and you're like, thanks. And if you got it hard copy, it goes on a shelf. And if you got it soft copy, you might not even open it, right? Why do those things matter? Why? And so asking and helping small businesses understand, like, look, when we deliver this to you, here are the top 3 metrics you're going to want to know. Here how you are against the market. Here's how you were against last year. How do we help you improve? What is the language of business that are in financial statements? And so that's been really fun. It's very different than what we've done in the past, in the sense that, like, we were tax credits and now we're broader, but it's the same in that it's still that mindset of, how do we help small business owners understand their business from a financial perspective better, to be able to have better cash flow or manage it, just have that stress of what don't I know taken off because somebody is thinking about it for them.
It's interesting. What you're saying in some ways resonates to me indirectly, because my wife, who's in computer programming, she's been through many iterations of her company over the years. A smaller company that was then acquired again, and now she's part of a very large corporation. And the whole idea of acquisitions and culture, you had some underlying, almost like mission or value proposition in there as well, regarding what your ultimate objective is in terms of helping your clients and helping them see the benefits and understand why this matters, all those kinds of things. So what have you learned from these acquisitions in particular as it relates to onboarding, creating more of a unified sense? I'm not sure everybody's located. If you're a
I'm not.
local, you see each other, don't see each other. How do you create the cohesion and the singular focus necessary to not only avoid the potential of, almost like to use the human analogy, an organ transplant that gets rejected by the body, right? Having that kind of pushback internally, but really feeling like it's one harmonized entity rowing in the same direction, different, different parts of what the clients are needing, but all part of one broader entity that is there for that service.
The great question that I'm still trying to figure out. So we are, 9 months into this. And we did, like I mentioned, we acquired 2 accounting firms, one of which is here local and one is 2 hours away. They did not know each other. So you also have that element of, creating a cohesive culture and system. And so I think, I've learned a lot through this, more just from bumps and bruises and trying to keep that North Star of helping business owners where we, that view of this is who we are and why we're doing it really front and center. I started out, we acquired them at the end of last year, didn't do anything during busy season because you don't want to bother, accountants during busy season.
Right.
And then really said, all right, we've got to get our systems and our processes unified. We need to go down that path. And so we went down that path pretty hard. And then probably in May or June, as comments would be made and certain personalities shown, I realized the piece of this that I forgot and probably is most important is the people part. And so I've had to backtrack a little bit and make sure, to sit down and paint that vision, because people can hear a vision and you need to hear it multiple times before it begins to actually sink in that this is now who we are. And we were changing from just your typical local accounting firm to, hey, we're going to be helping businesses all over the country, because that's from the tax credit standpoint. We've helped businesses all over the country. It's not just somebody down the path that our kids play baseball with. Super important. Those clients, super important, but it's going to change and it's going to look a little bit different, and the way that we serve might, our deliverable is going to be a little different. And so really slowing down and saying, okay, how do we bring people? I've had to do a lot of reflection on this, and I'm still, quite frankly, in the midst of it, of, slowing down, bringing people on board with that vision and something bigger. I think all of us like to be a part of something bigger than who we are. And so, hey, this is what it means to really be able to be impactful for small business owners, not just keep them compliant. So that's part of the piece that, that I wish I would have thought about earlier, but it's an important piece, and they're great people. People,
Yeah.
want to be a part of something. So
Yeah, it's reminding me, I wrote, this is the first book of the 2 that I've written, Becoming
okay.
the New Boss. And the underlying premise of the book is that it's the book that I wish I had when I got started in my role as school leader. And
Yeah.
one of the biggest mistakes that I talk about is not building enough equity with especially with the veteran staff at the
Yep.
front end before being the change agent that I was hired to be. So
Yes.
even though from the board side, we need to change, the school is this, it's that, it needs to be improved in these ways. And here I come in, the young guy ready to, interested in impressing and wanting to make those changes. And we did make those changes, and they were overall positive changes, but it was too fast and maybe too strong for a number of the staff members. So it got to a point where I needed to do a lot of damage control just to sort of reset. So that's always a challenge. And like you said, you're dealing with the timing of things and tax season, and how do you really deal with that whole component of it when people are knee deep, if not deeper, in the work that has to get done in a very timely fashion. And then, you move on, you lose sight and that kind of thing. So I am curious to know specifically about the vision piece. The way I heard it from you, it sounded like you had a vision and you were bringing it to the people. Was that the process that you utilize? Is that the process that you think others should be utilizing? or was it more of a collaborative process in terms of creating that vision? How did that unfold for you?
It was more of the former. It is a vision that we were bringing, but a dependency on the skill set that they had. And so that's the piece where it wasn't just, hey, this is who we are, and this is, we are the people with the answers, but it was collaborative in that this is what we want to do. These are this is the market we want to help, but we need you. We acquired accounting firms for a reason. And so part of that is also explaining or making sure that they understand the value they bring to the vision that we had. And so it was a collaboration in that sense.
Interesting. Okay, so since I just mentioned a mistake that I made that had ultimately set me up, at least on the path of coaching and consulting, which is what I do today,
Yeah.
as I commonly do, to end this first segment, is to ask you that same question. What would you say was the biggest mistake you have made thus far, professionally, perhaps personally, but usually professionally, that sets you up for future success, that taught you a very powerful lesson?
Plethora of mistakes I've made. Which one, right? I think, just going back to that last example, it's probably because it's the most poignant right now in my life, is just the value of people and making sure to slow down and make those connections. Look, without people, our lives would be boring. Like, we're relational creatures. It's super important. But we call it human resources, but there are individuals underneath it, and learning how to, like we were talking, paint that vision for why we all come to the table, why we are all important as we sit at the table. We all have different roles within the organization. I wish I would have learned that or thought about that earlier. I don't know how that's going to help where I end up going, but I'm learning that it's important, and I know it will make a difference for the future. And so I'm slowing down to say, I want to learn this lesson. I don't want it to just be a bump that a hurdle that I had to get over, but I want to internalize the truth of what I'm learning, so that as I go forward, that recognition of why people matter and how to integrate that into a business, what difference that makes. So
Yeah.
I'll get back with you in a few years and let you know the difference that it made.
Fair enough. I feel like that your answer in some ways brought the conversation full circle, because at the beginning you were talking about helping others and the importance of relationships and really meeting the needs of small business owners in particular who didn't have that advocate. And yet you also talked about maybe trying to clean up your own mess, so to speak, with it,
Yeah.
internally, or at least learn better how to value and integrate these different individuals and the slowness that's necessary. I'm listening again to Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits, in part because we're doing it in the mastermind group, and I just remember listening the other day and saying it again. The irony is you're trying to fast track processes, you're trying to make things more seamless, easier, remove the headwinds, as we talked about before, so that people could access your services and ultimately the tax credits and the things that they need. So efficiency is very important over there, but you can't be efficient when it comes to relationships, right? Relationships do take time. They take nurturing. You have to build trust. People have to know that you genuinely care, and you can't rush that. It doesn't happen that way. And so that's an important lesson, I think, for all of us to remember, because especially if you are of the problem solution oriented mindset where you see a problem and you want to solve it, you're not necessarily thinking about the relational side of it. At the end of the day, there is a real potential downside to that, which is, yeah, you're up in front and you're leading, but is anyone following? Are they behind you? Are they with you? Have they bought in? Because you never really took the time, to go through that process. So thank you for sharing that, because I think all of us need that as a reminder as well. Let's now transition to rapid fire. Let's go with 2 things you would do differently as your 25-year-old self.
Yes, 2 things I would do differently. I would, at 25, I was just graduating from law school. I would have traveled more.
Okay.
I thought when I would have traveled
Okay.
more, and I would have, probably because we were just talking about it, like invested in the relationships in those first, just gotten to know people more rather than just using people for an outcome.
Got it. 3 action steps every leader should do every day.
Start the morning with a cup of coffee or
Okay.
tea. Think through just at least 3 things that you're grateful for,
Mm-hmm.
and tell your team or your people or whoever you're talking with just why you appreciate them.
The best or worst advice you were ever given? You get to choose one or the other.
Yeah. If you want it bad enough, it will happen. There's a lot more than that, than just wanting it. So
What are your morning rituals?
I start with a cup of coffee in the morning. Yeah, I spend some quiet time, and I plan the day quietly before I go into the office.
If you had an hour with one person you otherwise would never meet, could be a historical figure, who would it be?
Dolly Parton.
And finally, a productivity tip that helps you to get more done.
I don't do this perfectly, and I don't do it as much as I like, but just planning my week at the end of the day. I think, yeah, or at the end of Sunday night, thinking through the weeks that I do that and I plan ahead, what do I need to accomplish? It helps.
Okay, great. So, Terracina, how can people connect with you further, learn more about your work, benefit from your services?
Sure. Yeah, we have a website, arvotech.com. So if they want to visit that, you'll see more about what we do. And yeah, both on the tax incentive side, credit side, and as well with the tax strategies around the tax compliance side.
Okay, and finally, please leave us with one final life lesson.
No one is born with it. This was something that was said to me. I can get very anxious that I'm not performing at the 100% that I think that I need to, and don't already instinctively know everything that I should do. And one of my mentors just kind of laughed at me as I was lamenting and said, no one's born with it. You work,
That's
you
right.
learn, you hope to learn those lessons.
Every winner was once a beginner.
That's right. That's
Okay.
exactly right.
Okay. Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure. I'm so glad we met. So glad to hear your story, learn more about what you're up to, and thank you for sharing very powerful lessons with us.
Thanks so
It's
much.
really been a
Have
pleasure.
good day.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode and for investing in yourself so that you can lead to succeed. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Your feedback gives the show more social proof and encourages more folks to listen.